Welcome to Season 1, Episode 1 of Connect for Life, the podcast. In this episode, Connect for Life founder Melanie Taddeo shares her personal story about a young woman who suffered a stroke, became blind as a result, and beat the odds by embracing her abilities as opposed to her disability. She founded the charity we know today as Connect for Life. Melanie's journey is a truly inspiring success story, and we hope you will enjoy this episode of Connect for Life, the podcast.
Hi there, I'm Melanie Taddeo, the founder of Connect for Life. Today I'd like to share with you my story and how Connect for Life became a reality. At the age of 21, I suffered a massive stroke that left me completely paralyzed on the left side and legally blind. As you can imagine, my life was turned upside down. Think about where you were at age 21. You're probably in the prime of your life, living your dream. Perhaps you're at school, enjoying some job experience, but definitely having fun with your friends and family. That was me. I was in my fourth year university studying visual art. I loved art, and I knew in my heart of hearts that I wanted to be a teacher. So it only made sense that my end goal was to become an art teacher. But little did I know the universe would have something else in store for me. I had started to have migraines, and of course had seen the doctors over and over again. And they kept telling me it was stress from university. But let's be real, who has stress from painting and drawing and playing with clay? I thought it was more than that. But all of the tests showed that everything was fine. I was okay. So I carried on with my life, trying to finish school and get a summer job. And I had just secured the most amazing summer job, teaching art at a day camp. I was living the dream, doing what I loved, and making money too. I was very involved in volunteering because, again, I wanted to be that teacher. I'd volunteered as a big sister, a day camp program supervisor, a nanny, and even a soccer coach. After work one day in the hot summer month of July, I had to go and coach my sister's soccer practice and had to drive on the 401 highway. Now, if you know the 401, it is like a parking lot during rush hour, and it was so hot that day. And as I was sitting in the middle of traffic, I just started to feel a really bad migraine coming on. I had these migraines before, but this one was different somehow. So much so that I lost the eyesight, my left eye, right there on the highway. I freaked out, of course, and tried to pull the car over to the side. And as I sat there clinging to the steering wheel, begging God to make my eyesight come back and help me get to my mom's house safely, I didn't know what was going to happen at that time. Somehow, miraculously, I did get to my mom's house, and I remember running into the house yelling, "I can't see! I can't see!" My mom yelled out, like any good mom, "Get a cold cloth and put it on your eye." Thanks, Mom. But I did just that, and as I sat there panicking, my mom kept saying, "You need to go to the hospital." I said, "I need to go coach the soccer practice because my parents had taught me about keeping your word and following through on those promises." So, of course, off I went to coach the soccer practice with my cold cloth in hand, of course. I coached the practice, and then my mom whisked me off to the hospital. They ran tests, and they weren't sure what was actually happening. But I was encouraged that I go downtown Toronto to see an eye specialist where they would conduct eye surgery to help relieve the pressure from behind my eye. You can imagine, as an art major and wanting to be an art teacher, I was freaking out about them touching my eyes. I didn't want them to touch them, and I didn't want to have the surgery. But the doctors told my parents, if your daughter does not have the surgery, she'll be blind for life. What would you do? My parents begged me, and of course, as a good daughter, I said yes, no problem, despite my reservations. After the surgery, they claimed I could see 20/20 perfect eyesight. But the reality is, that's not true. I was lethargic and throwing up, and they kept telling me it was anesthetic from the surgery and I'd be fine. And after 3 days of still feeling the same, they said it was time for me to go home because they needed the hospital bed where I could recover at home. So off I went to stay with my parents and just heal. But my headaches pertained and I kept throwing up and I felt miserable. Finally, a few days later than that, my mom said, okay, we need to go to the doctors for a follow-up on your eye. And I said, Mom, I don't feel good. I'm really not feeling well. I don't want to go. She's like, come on, Melanie, you'll have a shower. You'll feel better. Now I was a modest young woman and I would never let my mom shower me, but that's what had to happen. She had to dress me even. How embarrassing. And I remember standing at the top of the staircase. My mom and dad had a Scarlet O'Hara staircase, and I kept looking down and the house was spinning. And I said, Mom, I think I'm going to go down on my bum. She said, okay. So I plopped down on the top stairs and I kept inching my way down the stairs. So I thought. But my mom said to me, Melanie, move your left side. And I said, I am. What do you think I am, stupid? And of course, I would never have spoken to my mom like that. But in fact, I had the stroke at the top of the staircase. The paramedics were called, and off I was whisked back to the hospital. This time, the test showed that I had developed 2 large blood clots in my sagittal sinus in my brain. And I was whisked down to Toronto Western Hospital, where I underwent life-saving brain surgery. I would later find out that I was the 2nd out of 5 to survive this surgery in all of North America. And in this surgery, I slipped into a coma. You know what they say? People in comas can hear everything you say. It's true. I could hear people crying and begging me to wake up. I heard them saying their deepest, darkest secrets with me. Little did they know that I would remember what they said. My little sister came and confessed that she had stolen my case of peach gum. I was so angry. I literally, figuratively saw red. I would hold it against her many years later, but that's besides the point. As I laid there in my hospital bed, hearing everybody talking, and I could feel my sisters doing my nails and giving me squeezes of the hand and support, and people telling me to wake up, come on, we need you, all of this stuff. But yet I still laid there until one day I heard the priest giving me my last rites. I was freaking out. I wanted to yell, I'm still alive. I'm not dead. But I couldn't. My voice wouldn't come to me, and I just laid there so still. I did have a vision, though, a dream, a vision, I'm not quite sure. But it was a big oak tree, and sitting on that big oak tree was my uncle and my grandfather, who had both passed away. And behind that tree was a bright, bright light. And they kept telling me, it's not your time. It's not your time. Melanie, it's not your time. Fight harder. And I woke up. The excitement and disbelief of everybody around me was so amazing. And I felt so loved. However, little did I know that this was the beginning of a very long journey, because I had to learn to walk again, to talk again, and to regain my independence, not to mention now navigate my new life as a blind woman. People kept telling me I was disabled, that it was okay, I didn't have to worry. But all I kept saying is, I want to be normal. I want to be normal, whatever normal is. For me, that was learning to walk again and talk again and start to get my life back in order, because I had a plan. Of course, my dream of becoming a teacher. After months and months and years, in fact, of rehab, learning to walk and playing with the cones, occupational therapy, the pegs, all those fun exercises, I finally was released from the rehab hospital. But I needed to go to the Canadian National Institute for the Blind, where they helped me regain my independence and navigate my new life as a blind woman. I'm so grateful for that experience. But what I noticed while on this journey is I met a lot of incredible people with various disabilities, showing me how easy life could be once you accept and once you go through the motions and understanding of what it takes and what's involved. But I also noticed my parents were floundering. See, nobody knew how to accommodate and address the fact that this young person has now acquired a disability so later in life. So there wasn't a lot of resources available to me or my family for support. And this really stuck with me on my journey throughout this exciting time. So after completing the hospital rehab and getting my independence back and navigating my world as a blind woman, I moved out on my own again, and I felt like life was back on track. So I did what any normal person in my life, my situation would be, and that was to apply to teachers college. Now, based on all my experience and my grades, they had to give me the interview, but it went like this. How are you going to do this with your disability, and how are you going to do that with your disability? I finally said to the interviewer, I thought this interview was about my abilities and not my disability. They said, oh, yeah, okay. And this was my first experience on advocating for myself. They had to give let me in, and of course, reluctantly, of course. But on my very first day, a professor said to me, "You'll be gone by Christmas." I smiled politely and said, "Watch me." I had to work really, really hard because this was my first time navigating the educational system as somebody with a disability. Audiobooks, note takers, all of these things were very, very different. Not to mention all of the barriers that I would face with the teachers and the students, because again, this was new for everybody. But as I worked hard, and as my family would say, I'm stubborn. I personally like to say determined. It sounds a lot nicer, don't you think? I graduated at the top of my class as the first legally blind teacher to graduate in Ontario. I was so proud and I was ready to take on the world. But then I faced another barrier. Nobody would hire me because they were afraid with my disability I wouldn't be able to do the job. But who better to teach students with disabilities than somebody with lived experience? But nevertheless, facing rejection after rejection, I had to get creative and innovative because I worked so hard and I wanted to share my abilities and my teaching experience. And I had met so many people with various disabilities on this journey that said they wanted to be independent. And I kept saying, "You can." And they said, "How?" I did my research and saw there were so many amazing organizations and charities out there that serve individuals with disabilities, but none that really focused on people's abilities and skill development. So after doing my research, I created Connect for Life. And we incorporated in 2012, but launched the charity in 2014. This was a huge endeavor for me. Yes, we had some basic programs, our life skills program. We offered advocacy and referral services, and of course, our online radio station, Voices for Ability Radio, the first 24/7 internet radio station for, about, and by people with disabilities. But I'm talking, this was bare bones. We just started. We needed to create awareness, make connections and partnerships in the community. And after 10 years, a whole decade of Connect for Life being in existence, we've evolved and changed. We have programs in life skills, Connect for Wellness, our mental health and well-being peer support program, an accessible voice and broadcasting where we train individuals in the area of broadcasting and podcasting, our introduction to public speaking course, and so many more opportunities and programs that you'll learn more about in other episodes. It's been so exciting to watch Connect for Life come to life and become a reality, but I couldn't have done it all by myself. I've had amazing volunteers, board members, and clients that have helped me on this journey and that continuously help us grow. In fact, we're expanding to South Africa by opening a chapter of Connect for Life in South Africa. And that's a whole episode on its own that you will hear in the future. So Connect for Life, the podcast, is an opportunity for us to share what's happening at Connect for Life on a regular basis. You'll hear our newsletters, students, our clients, and our volunteers share stories of success, challenges, and on various topics that people with disabilities face on a regular basis. We'll have guests, some blogs, and so much more. So I hope that you'll stay with us on this journey as Connect for Life, the podcast, becomes a reality. And this is just showing you what's possible when you focus on your abilities and not the disability. Until next time.
You have been listening to Connect for Life, the podcast. Connect for Life is a Canadian-based registered charity committed to eliminating barriers for people with disabilities. Visit connectforlife.ca and join us in helping people with disabilities become the champions of their growth stories.